Today, I'd like to take you on a journey and explore one of the most bizarre fan projects that I have ever seen, the Magic the Gathering musical. Now, you may expect the Magic the Gathering musical to focus on characters like Jace or Chandra or Gideon or any other major character in Magic the Gathering's lore. But instead of focusing on that high fantasy lore, this musical instead decides to take a more grounded approach by being based around a tournament at a local game store. Which, does make sense. A story based on fantasy and magic is inherently going to be very hard to produce, especially in a musical setting. So grounding the story makes a lot more sense and is probably a lot easier for the average viewer to follow. But what makes less sense, however, is that this musical is all done with puppets rather than human actors, similar to something like Avenue Q. The first song in the musical is called It's a Magical Day, which serves as a way to introduce us all to the three main protagonists. We have Jake, a self-assured and confident player who's doing everything he can to win this upcoming tournament. We have Doofus, the stereotypical loser nerd character who lacks any kind of self-confidence or remote respect from any of his peers. And finally, we have Heidi, a goth puppet that isn't going to the local game store to play Magic the Gathering, but instead is going there to play Vampire the Masquerade, as you can tell by her very stylish vampire teeth. Before we get any further, however, I'd like to talk about who actually made this project. This project was created by a company called Zombie Cat Productions, which is a small production company based out of Atlanta, Georgia. And I'm honestly not 100% sure if they still exist. This company has two official websites that they've linked on their social media pages, but both of them go to dead domains. And at least according to the Wayback Machine, it looks like these websites have been expired for a while, because at some point, in 2017, one of them got taken over by a Japanese hair removal service. On top of that, their social media is just generally speaking pretty inactive. Their last YouTube video was the Magic the Gathering musical itself, and for reference, this came out on November 20th, 2013. And their last Instagram post was in February of 2020, and seemingly their most active social media page is their Facebook, and their last update was in 2023, so it seems they're only really still active on Facebook. Also, at some point they rebranded from Zombie Cat Production to Zombie Cat Builds, so I think this company now just kind of does production builds rather than actually making full-blown movies or shorts anymore. Tangent aside, prior to making the Magic the Gathering musical, the company had some success at local film festivals doing these stop motion films. Specifically in their making of video for Magic the Gathering the musical, they referenced the film Frowning, which is the stop motion film based on a killer clown. And after the success of Frowning, they decided they wanted to make a bigger and better product with a bigger budget. So they made a Kickstarter and Indiegogo for the Magic the Gathering musical. And in total, they were able to raise $6,880 from their Kickstarter and $680 from their Indiegogo, which is honestly way less than I would have thought considering the scale of this production. According to their Kickstarter, over 70 different people worked on this project, which is pretty insane for that small of a budget. Now, obviously, while there were a large number of people working on it, there were a smaller number of people who were the main creative driving forces. The musical itself was written by Charles Thomas, the music was done by Michael Jones, the project was directed by Molly Coffey, Raymond Carr was the head puppeteer of the project, Dan Slemons was the director of photography, and Amy Holbergus was the production designer. Hopefully I didn't pronounce anybody's names horribly wrong. Now, I think it's pretty unlikely that you've heard of any of these people before. I certainly didn't before working on this video, but some of them have gone on to work on some pretty impressive projects. Molly Coffey actually worked on Atlanta as a set decorator and was the production designer for Willy's Wonderland, which, if you have never heard of this movie before, it's basically the knockoff Five Nights at Freddy's movie before the Five Nights at Freddy's movie came out, and the main character is played by Nicolas Cage, so it's basically just a better version of the Five Nights at Freddy's movie. It's hilarious. Raymond Carr has probably the most impressive resume out of anybody here, because along with this project, he's also done work for shows like Woke and Lazy Town of all things, and also he does the puppeteering work for the Aflac social media. Like the duck, like he does the puppets for it. Like that's crazy to me. Amy Holberg went to work on the art departments for some pretty major releases like The Hunger Games, Black Panther, and even The Walking Dead. And it's honestly pretty awesome to see that some of these people who worked on such a weird and goofy project like this went on to contribute to pretty major blockbusters. Anyways, with this long backstory out of the way, let's get back to the actual musical itself. After the introductory song, we quickly get to our next song, which introduces our newest character, Jake's trainer. And this song is clearly designed to set him up as the antagonist of the musical. But oh my god, this song is terrible. Like in every way. The trainer's voice is like nails on a fucking chalkboard. And because of the weird lispy voice the actor playing him is doing, it's really hard to understand exactly what he's saying at certain points. For example,
back years ago, I was a pimp, and then one day I wasn't shit. The rules I knew disappeared, and my world became chaos.
now, obviously, a portion of this obnoxiousness is intentional, since the objective of the song is clearly to communicate that Jake's trainer is the bad guy and that he's pretty insufferable and you're supposed to hate him. However, the song is so annoying that it doesn't really make me dislike the trainer, but rather just the overall product, which seems like a bit of an issue to me. I think instead they could have gone for a higher quality production for this song and potentially highlight the trainer's negative qualities in a different way, kind of something like the Gaston song from Beauty and the Beast. This song is also the first time we get to see one of these animated sections, which appear throughout the musical, and while I personally don't really love the way most of these look, they're overall fine. However, their inclusion to me seems a tad strange. I'm guessing they mainly exist as a way to get over the limitations of using puppets, since they're often used to show emotions that would be kind of difficult to communicate on just a puppet itself. Like in this case, the immense sadness that Jake's trainer got from losing in the past. Anyways, once we're through this miserable song, we get a brief dialogue where Doofus and Jake decide to sign up for the tournament that's going on that day. But that's very short as we quickly transition into another song. This time it's a rap battle between two random players dueling one another. This doesn't really help to contribute to the overall plot in any way, but I think this song does a good job at showcasing some of the legitimate charm that this musical has sometimes. A lot of the lines directly reference some existing magic cards, but like in a way that makes sense in the context of a song.
Your mana doesn't matter when my psychic venom splatters, bringing pestilence to your next of kin and serving it on a platter. Zombie master ripping faster, you can't fuck with Kanye East. Your punk ass name is kinda fitting, cause I just tore your ass to pieces.
And while the song isn't really anything to write home about, it kinda gives the same appeal that something like an old school epic rap battle of history has. It's not like peak music, but it's something that's like fun. Once the rap battle is over, everybody at the game store is freaking out because they just witnessed the most epic rap battle since Mr. T versus Mr. Rogers. But this causes the Vampire the Masquerade players to get really annoyed because these Magic players are being too dang loud and they're just annoyed about it. Nothing happens at this point in the story. Along with this, we also get an update from Doofus, who is starting to feel super anxious about competing in this tournament. And we get to hear all about it in the next song, the exposition song, which is the most 2010s thing that I have ever heard.
People think that exposition is overused, a cop-out and a way to cheaply let the audience know everything that we're feeling, we're thinking with no regards to the narrative, the plot, and to coherent writing, but the truth.
In fact, this entire project feels like a perfect encapsulation of 2010's humor. I mean, like, one of the tiers on their Kickstarter is a Leroy Jenkins reference, for God's sakes. Personally, I'm not a big fan of bits like this. I think just saying exposition and the joke with this song being that you're self-aware about the fact that you're saying exposition is kind of lazy from both a comedic and storytelling perspective. I also think my distaste to this is due to just seeing it so often in a lot of media from this time. So I think given the context of when this came out, it makes sense because this kind of humor was pretty popular. And also this isn't really that serious of a project, so I feel like it would be a little bit unfair for me to fault it too much for this. but I think just viewing it from today's lens, it's a little bit less funny than it was at the time. Criticisms aside, the song does give us actual exposition to talk about. Most importantly, that Jake's brother fucking died of a caffeine overdose. Jesus. And Doofus, it reminds him of his dead brother. And because of this, now Jake's connection to Doofus is stronger, and he really hopes Doofus succeeds. And then once that's done, we quickly cut back to Heidi, and we get another one of those like weird animations I mentioned before, but it's kind of a stretch to call this an animation since you're kind of just zooming into like a JPEG. Regardless, it's now time for Heidi's song, and God, I really hate to use the word cringe, but Christ, trying to make a puppet sexy is like objectively cringe. Like, what is this? Why would you do this? Who thought this was a good idea? And how are we only 9 minutes into this thing? And how have I been talking about this longer than that? Anyways, the song is about how the goth vampire puppet hates the magic playing puppets, so she signs up for the tournament to shut them up. She also just happens to have a tournament ready deck on hand despite hating the game. Come on, Heidi, that's like a few $100s. How do you just have that? After that song, we get another song by the LGS owner that is honestly pretty forgettable. It has some fun references to magic in it, but it's kind of just like a song that plays in the background. Once the song is over, we've like jumped through the entire tournament and we cut to the semifinals, which all of our protagonists have made it to. But despite making it to the semifinals, Doofus still doesn't really believe in himself. But then a random person in like the back of the LGS just comes out of the woodworks and decides to inspire him with a song. And genuinely, this is probably one of the best songs in the entire project because the guy who plays this puppet has a pretty wonderful singing voice.
This is the here and the now. You're just as good as those kids.
Especially when compared to
Back years ago, I was a pimp, and in one day I wasn't shit. Rules I knew, this
like, it's legitimately kind of crazy how much better this song is than every other song before it. From hearing the silver-tongued stranger, Doofus is now starting to believe himself a little bit more. Then we cut to our other protagonist, Jake, and he is once again arguing with the trainer, with Jake's trainer essentially just telling him to cheat and do anything he can to win. While Jake thinks this is wrong and it goes against his integrity. And we get this battle of ideas in song. And the song itself is mainly done to solidify Jake's belief in himself, and also to showcase that to Jake, winning isn't everything. But what's very interesting about this song is that Jake's trainer actually sings in this one, like
I wasn't shit. Rules I knew,
is not singing. But this
every time I look at you, I don't understand.
Is singing. At first I thought one of the main reasons the trainer sounded so off in the beginning was likely because it was very difficult for the actor to do both the trainer's actual voice and also sing in said voice. But in reality, for some reason, they just decided to not make him sing in the earlier songs, or like maybe he figured out how to sing later and they didn't go back and redo those songs. Either way, it's just kind of weird and confusing to me since I'm assuming a lot of people were probably turned off by that first song, because I know I was in my first viewing. And it's also just in general kind of strange to me how the overall quality of the songs seems to improve as the musical goes on. Back to the plot, we're now at the finals of the tournament, and excuse me? The final is a 3-person free-for-all? What format is this? Is this tournament sanctioned by the WPN? How is this allowed? Who approved this? Yeah, that's right. For some reason, the finals of this tournament is a 3-person free-for-all, with all of our 3 main characters being the participants, culminating in a song where each character explains their reasons for playing. The issue is that now Jake's motivation is essentially to do what's right, which means like, make Doofus win. And because of this, the 3-player final format sucks because Jake just king makes Doofus by swinging everything at Heidi. Like, the finals itself shows the objective problem with having a 3-player game of Magic. Personally, I think this resolution is pretty unsatisfying because Doofus just didn't outplay anybody, he just kind of got gifted the win. I know if I was watching this at a tournament, I'd be kind of pissed because I was like, oh, that one guy just threw the game away. Like, I don't know, it seems deeply unsatisfying to me as somebody who has played Magic for a while. A better resolution would have been like Jake and Doofus in the finals, and maybe like Jake intentionally misses a play opportunity and Doofus sees through it or something. Like something better than a 3-player free-for-all finale. Like that is just objectively, from a Magic standpoint, a terrible way to resolve things. I don't know if that's like a perfect solution, but this current ending just doesn't feel anything like the end of a Magic tournament would feel like. But then again, there's also not like puppets in a real Magic tournament, so what the fuck do I know? Anyways, after our match, we get our final song in the musical, which is a redone version of the very first song, It's a Magic Day. Now the lyrics are different, and it's done to showcase how the characters have grown from the beginning to the end of the musical. Jake is confident in his resolve and has decided he's going to try and win another tournament another day, and is happy that he made friends and that he was able to stay true to himself. Doofus has now found some new confidence in himself, and Heidi realized that she actually likes playing Magic and will keep trying to win a tournament. And the fact that she didn't realize this despite owning a tournament-ready deck blows my fucking mind. And the shop owner has decided to ban Jake's trainer from the store since he's being problematic and trying to disrupt the sanctity of tournaments by telling people to cheat. Also, this is just a random side note, and I wasn't really sure where else to include this, but the guy who plays the shop owner is the same guy who plays Jax in the 2021 Mortal Kombat movie, which is just super random to me. Overall, the Magic the Gathering musical is honestly just kind of weird. The project is full of a bunch of strange and confusing decisions, and to be quite blunt, I don't think they were able to execute in every area that they set out to. Despite the project's shortcomings, it's still pretty impressive that this whole thing actually came together, considering how shoestring of a budget they had to work with. And also, I should mention, because I realized while editing this I didn't say this anywhere else, but this was not remotely licensed by Wizards of the Coast. I think you could probably tell that from the fake Magic cards they use. So that's another reason I'm honestly quite surprised this project still exists, because I think like legally this is in a gray area. I don't think it's really worth Wizards' time to go after this, but it's still a little bit crazy that they just have Magic the Gathering in the title. But another thing that's actually really interesting is that this isn't the only music-based project that's been created for Magic the Gathering. If you want to know more about that, I made a video going over Magic the Gathering's official album releases.